The story of Norway begins long, long ago. It is a tale etched in ancient stone, carved by colossal glaciers of ice. This land was once covered by a thick frozen sheet. As the ice slowly melted, it revealed a dramatic landscape. Deep fjords cut into the coastline like giant fingers. Towering mountains rose towards the sky, their peaks often shrouded in mist. The air was crisp and cold. The sea was powerful and unforgiving. This raw, untamed beauty would shape the people who came to live here, making them resilient and resourceful from the very start of their epic journey. The first people arrived thousands of years ago. They were hunters and gatherers. They followed the retreating ice. They searched for animals to hunt and looked for plants to eat. Life was incredibly hard. They lived in small groups, moved with the seasons, and built simple shelters from wood and animal skins. The long, dark winters were a test of survival, while the short summers were a brief time of plenty. These early Norwegians learned to read the signs of nature. They understood the ways of the animals and respected the power of the sea and the mountains around them. Imagine the silence of those early days. Only the sounds of nature broke the quiet. The cry of a seabird, the roar of a distant avalanche, the whisper of the wind through the pine forests. These people left behind few traces. We find their stone tools and see their simple rock carvings. These carvings show animals and hunting scenes. They give us small clues about their lives, hinting at their beliefs and their struggles. It's like trying to piece together a puzzle with many missing parts. The land itself holds many secrets from this distant past, waiting to be uncovered by those who listen closely. This ancient land held a certain magic. It was a place of stark contrasts. Bright summer nights where the sun barely set and long, dark winter days filled with stories and shadows. The people felt a deep connection to the earth. They saw spirits in the rocks and trees and believed in powerful forces that controlled the world. This connection to the natural world would become a strong part of Norwegian culture. It was a foundation built on respect for the harshness and beauty of their homeland. This deep bond with the land would endure through all the changes that were to come. Then something changed in this northern land. A new energy began to stir. The people of Norway learned to build amazing ships. These ships were long and narrow, strong yet flexible. They could sail in shallow rivers and also cross the wide open ocean. These were the famous Viking longships. With these vessels, the Norwegians were no longer confined to their fjords. The sea became a road, not a barrier. A new age was about to begin. It would be an age of exploration, trade, and fierce conflict that would echo through history for centuries. The reasons for this sudden explosion of activity are many. Perhaps the land could not support a growing population. Perhaps there were too many ambitious local chieftains, all wanting power and wealth. Some say it was the spirit of adventure, a desire to see what lay beyond the horizon. Whatever the reasons, Norwegians began to look outwards. They were skilled sailors and fierce warriors. They were not afraid of danger and were ready to take great risks for great rewards. The world outside Scandinavia was about to feel their presence in a very dramatic and often terrifying way. The first raids were sudden and brutal. Monasteries in Britain and Ireland were easy targets. They were often undefended and held valuable treasures. The Vikings came from the sea without warning. They attacked quickly, took gold, silver, and captives, and then disappeared as quickly as they had arrived. Fear spread along the coasts of Europe. People prayed to be saved from the fury of the Northmen. But the Vikings were not just raiders. They were also traders, explorers, and settlers looking for new lands to farm and call home. Their impact was complex and far-reaching. This period is known as the Viking Age. It lasted for over 2 centuries. Norwegian Vikings traveled far and wide. They sailed west to Iceland and Greenland. They even reached North America long before Columbus. They called it Vinland. They established settlements and trading posts. They fought battles and made alliances. They left their mark on many lands. Their sagas, epic poems, tell stories of brave heroes. They speak of daring voyages and great battles. These stories, passed down through generations, paint a vivid picture of this extraordinary time in Norway's history, a time of unparalleled expansion and influence. Back in Norway, the land was divided. Many small kingdoms existed. Local chieftains ruled their own areas. They often fought with each other. There was no single ruler for the whole country. This began to change with a man named Harold. Harold was a chieftain from a place called Vestfold. He had a bold ambition. He wanted to become king of all Norway. Legend tells a fascinating story about his determination. It is said he fell in love with a princess named Gyda. She refused to marry him. Not until he was king of all Norway, she declared boldly. Harold took this challenge to heart. He made a famous vow. He swore he would not cut or comb his hair, not until he had united all of Norway under his rule. This earned him the nickname Harold Fairhair, though perhaps not at first. He began a long series of battles. He fought against other chieftains and slowly conquered more and more territory. His warriors were loyal and his determination was strong. Many chieftains who opposed him were defeated. Some were killed, others fled the country, seeking new homes in places like Iceland. This exodus itself had a profound impact on the Norse world. The Battle of Hafrsfjord, around the year 872, was a turning point. It was a great naval battle. Harold Fairhair won a decisive victory. After this battle, he was recognized as the first king of a united Norway. He could finally cut his hair. This unification was a huge step. It was the beginning of Norway as a single kingdom. However, it was not an easy task to rule such a vast and rugged land. The country was still full of powerful local families. Keeping them all loyal required great skill and sometimes great force. The process of true unification would take many more years. King Harold Fairhair laid the foundations. He created a structure for the kingdom. He established a system of rule, but the idea of a united Norway was still new. It was fragile. After Harold's death, there were more struggles for power. His sons fought among themselves. The unity he had worked so hard to achieve was often threatened. Yet the seed had been planted. The dream of one Norwegian kingdom had taken root. This dream would continue to shape the destiny of the nation. It was a dream born from a vow, a challenge, and a king's relentless ambition. As Norway became a kingdom, another big change was coming. This change was about beliefs. For centuries, Norwegians had worshipped their own gods: Odin, the All-Father; Thor, the god of thunder with his mighty hammer; Freya, the goddess of love and war. These were the gods of Norse mythology. People made sacrifices to them. They told stories about their adventures. These beliefs were deeply woven into the fabric of daily life. They explained the world. They gave meaning to life and death. The great halls of chieftains echoed with tales of gods and heroes, a vibrant oral tradition. But a new religion was spreading across Europe. This was Christianity. Missionaries traveled north. They brought stories of a different God. They spoke of Jesus Christ. Some Norwegian kings who had traveled abroad converted to Christianity. They tried to bring the new faith to their people. One such king was Olav Tryggvason. Another was Olav Haraldsson, later known as Saint Olav. They used both persuasion and force. They built churches. They destroyed old pagan temples. This was a time of great religious tension and upheaval throughout the land. Many Norwegians resisted the new religion. They clung to their old gods. They did not want to give up their traditions. There were rebellions and conflicts. The change did not happen overnight. It took many generations. Sometimes old beliefs mixed with new ones. People might still fear the old spirits of the land even as they went to church. The conversion of Norway was a slow and often difficult process. It was a clash of two different worldviews. It changed the culture and society of Norway forever. The echoes of the old gods, however, never entirely faded from the popular imagination. Olav Haraldsson played a key role. He fought hard to make Norway Christian. He was killed in the Battle of Stiklestad in 1030. After his death, stories of miracles began to spread. He became known as St. Olav. He became the patron saint of Norway. His death paradoxically helped to strengthen Christianity in the country. New faith brought Norway closer to the rest of Europe. It brought new learning and new ways of thinking. But the old stories and the connection to the Norse past remained a powerful part of Norway's identity, a hidden current beneath the new surface. Section 5. The Long Sleep Centuries Under Foreign Crowns. After the Viking Age, Norway's story took a different turn. The kingdom faced many challenges. Internal struggles for power continued. The Black Death, a terrible plague, arrived in the mid-13th century. It killed a huge part of the population. This weakened the country greatly. Norway's noble families were devastated. The kingdom lost much of its strength and influence. It was a dark and difficult time. The vibrant energy of the earlier centuries seemed to fade. The The nation entered a period where its destiny would be increasingly shaped by its more powerful neighbors. In 1397, Norway entered the Kalmar Union. This was a union of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. It was meant to be a partnership of equals, but Denmark quickly became the dominant power. Sweden eventually broke away from the union. Norway, however, remained tied to Denmark. This union lasted for over 400 years. For many Norwegians, this felt like a long period of foreign rule. Decisions about Norway were often made in Copenhagen, the Danish capital. The Norwegian language and culture were influenced by Danish ways. It was a time when Norway's own voice seemed to grow faint. This long period is sometimes called the 400-year night in Norwegian history. It suggests a time when Norway was in shadow. Its own identity was suppressed. While this might be a dramatic description, there is some truth to it. The Norwegian economy was often managed for Denmark's benefit. Norwegian resources like timber and fish were exploited. Yet life went on. People adapted. Local traditions survived in rural areas. The connection to the land and the sea remained strong. Even in these centuries of union, the spirit of Norway did not completely die. It merely slumbered, waiting for chance to reawaken. Despite Danish dominance, some aspects of Norwegian identity persisted. The legal system retained some distinct Norwegian features. Peasant farmers, particularly in the remote valleys and fjords, maintained a degree of independence and upheld their ancient customs. These were quiet acts of cultural preservation. The stories of the past, the sagas, were still told. Though not a sovereign state, the idea of Norway as a distinct entity, a kingdom with its own history, never entirely vanished. This underlying sense of self would prove crucial when opportunities for change finally arose on the European stage. Section 6. A Constitution's Cry. A fleeting taste of freedom. The early 1800s brought great changes to Europe. The Napoleonic Wars shook the continent. Denmark-Norway found itself on the losing side. As a result, Denmark was forced to cede Norway to Sweden in 1814. This was decided by the great powers of Europe. The Norwegians were not consulted. They were to be transferred from one king to another, like a piece of property. This news sparked outrage in Norway. After centuries under Danish rule, the thought of being handed over to Sweden was unbearable for many. A spirit of defiance ignited across the land. A group of prominent Norwegians decided to take matters into their own hands. They gathered at a place called Eidsvoll. In the spring of 1814, they worked quickly. They drafted a constitution for Norway. This constitution was very modern for its time. It was inspired by the ideas of the American and French revolutions. It declared Norway to be an independent kingdom. It established a parliament and guaranteed certain rights for its citizens. This was a bold move. It was a declaration of self-determination, a cry for freedom that echoed through the Norwegian valleys. The Norwegians elected a Danish prince, Christian Frederick, as their king. For a few short months in the summer of 1814, Norway was an independent nation. It was a time of great excitement and hope, but Sweden, with the backing of other European powers, was not willing to let Norway go. A short war followed. The small Norwegian army could not match the Swedish forces. Norway was forced to accept a union with Sweden. It seemed that the dream of independence had been quickly crushed. The joy of May turned into the reality of a new union by autumn. However, the events of 1814 were not a complete failure. Norway was not simply absorbed into Sweden. It entered the Union as a separate kingdom. It was allowed to keep its new constitution with some changes. It had its own parliament and a degree of self-government. The Norwegian constitution of 1814 became a powerful symbol. It represented the nation's desire for freedom. It became the foundation for the struggle for full independence in the decades that followed. That brief taste of freedom had ignited a flame that would not be easily extinguished. Section 7. The Path to a Flag of Our Own, a Nation Reborn. The union with Sweden lasted for nearly a century, from 1814 until 1905. During this time, Norway experienced significant growth. Its economy developed, shipping and trade flourished, and the population grew. But politically, there was constant tension with Sweden. Norwegians wanted more control over their own affairs. The Swedish king and government often tried to assert more authority. This led to many disagreements. The Norwegian parliament, the Storting, became a key battleground for Norwegian rights. It was a slow, persistent struggle for greater autonomy. A strong sense of national identity grew in Norway during the 19th century. This was known as national romanticism. Writers, artists and musicians looked to Norway's past. They celebrated its history, its folklore and its natural beauty. Henrik Wergeland wrote passionate poems about freedom. Musicians like Edvard Grieg composed music inspired by Norwegian folk tunes. Painters depicted the stunning landscapes of the fjords and mountains. This cultural awakening helped to strengthen the feeling of being Norwegian. It gave people a shared sense of pride and belonging. It fueled the desire for full independence. One major point of conflict was the issue of a separate Norwegian foreign service. Norway had a large merchant fleet. It needed its own consuls in foreign ports to protect its interests. Sweden resisted this demand. They saw it as a step towards separation. The consular dispute became a major political crisis. Norwegian politicians pushed hard for this right. The Swedish king refused. This deadlock brought the union to a breaking point. It became clear that the two countries had very different ideas about the future of their relationship. The patience of the Norwegian people was wearing thin. Finally, in 1905, the Norwegian government took a bold step. The Storting declared that the union with Sweden was dissolved. King Oscar II of Sweden was no longer king of Norway. This was a unilateral declaration of independence. For a tense period, it seemed there might be war. But Sweden, after some hesitation, chose to negotiate. A peaceful settlement was reached. Norway was once again a fully independent nation. The Norwegian people voted overwhelmingly to become a monarchy. They chose a Danish prince, Karl, who took the name Håkon VII. He became the first king of a truly independent Norway in centuries. Section 8, Shadows of War, Beacons of Courage, Trials of the 20th Century. Independent Norway hoped for a peaceful future. It declared itself neutral in World War I. The country managed to stay out of the fighting, but the war still had an impact. Norwegian shipping suffered losses. There were economic hardships. After the war, Norway joined the League of Nations. It hoped to contribute to international peace. The interwar years were a time of economic challenges. The Great Depression affected Norway too, but the country continued to develop its democratic institutions. It focused on building a modern society for its citizens. Then a darker shadow fell across Europe. World War II began in 1939. Norway again declared its neutrality, but this time neutrality was not enough. On April 9, 1940, Nazi Germany invaded Norway. The invasion was a surprise attack. The Norwegian government and the king refused to surrender. They fought back bravely, but the German military machine was too strong. After 2 months of fighting, Norway was occupied. King Håkon VII and the government escaped to London. From there, they continued to lead the resistance against the occupiers. Their escape became a symbol of defiance. The 5 years of German occupation were a difficult time. Many Norwegians suffered greatly. There was repression and hardship, but there was also widespread resistance. People secretly listened to radio broadcasts from London. They organized underground networks. They carried out acts of sabotage against the German forces. Many brave men and women risked their lives in the fight for freedom. The Norwegian merchant fleet played a vital role for the Allies. The spirit of resistance was strong. Stories of courage and sacrifice from this period are still told with pride in Norway today. When the war ended in 1945, Norway was free again. The country celebrated its liberation, but it also faced a huge task of rebuilding. Towns and infrastructure had been destroyed, the economy was in ruins. However, the war had also strengthened national unity. Norwegians were determined to rebuild their country. They wanted to create a better future. The experience of the occupation left a lasting mark. It reinforced Norway's commitment to democracy. It also shaped its foreign policy in the post-war world. The nation had been tested severely, and it had endured with remarkable fortitude. Section 9, From Black Gold to Arctic Light Norway in the Modern Era. After World War II, Norway focused on rebuilding. It joined the United Nations. It became a founding member of NATO. This marked a shift from its earlier policy of neutrality. The country worked to develop its welfare state. The goal was to provide security and opportunity for all citizens. This included things like universal healthcare. It meant good education and social support systems. The post-war years were a period of steady progress. Norway was building a modern, prosperous, and equitable society. This was achieved through hard work and a strong sense of community. Then, in the late 1960s, something happened that would change Norway dramatically. Oil and natural gas were discovered in the North Sea. This was like finding buried treasure. Black gold began to flow. It brought enormous wealth to the country. Norway managed this newfound wealth carefully. A large part of the oil revenue was put into a special fund. This fund, now one of the largest sovereign wealth funds in the world, was designed to benefit future generations. The oil money helped to further develop the welfare state. It transformed Norway into one of the richest countries on earth. Modern Norway is known for many things: its high standard of living, its beautiful, unspoiled nature, its commitment to peace and human rights. It often plays an active role in international diplomacy. It is a leader in areas like environmental protection and sustainable development. The country faces new challenges, of course. Climate change is a major concern, especially for an Arctic nation. Managing its oil wealth wisely for a future beyond fossil fuels is another. Integrating immigrants into society is also an ongoing process. These are complex issues for a thoughtful nation. The story of Norway continues to unfold. From the first hardy settlers on its icy shores, through the daring voyages of the Vikings, past the long centuries under foreign rule, through the struggles for independence and the trials of war, to the discovery of oil and the creation of a modern marvel, it is a saga of resilience, adaptation, and a deep love for a unique land. As Norway looks to the future, it carries with it the echoes of its past. The whispers of the north wind still tell tales of a nation shaped by the sea, the mountains, and the enduring spirit of its people.